Thanks, Quentin. And always on these occasions I acknowledge the original custodians of our land, and I would like to do that again tonight and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. I'd like to thank Peter Newman, who's come all the way from Western Australia to address us tonight, and I'd like to thank our panel for their contribution. And I'd like to thank the Sydney Morning Herald and Darren Goodsir. They are our media partner for these talks, and these talks are something that are of great value to us in Sydney. So thank you to the Herald. I'd also like to thank Gail Connolly, who is such a terrific transport contributor to the city. So you've seen the fly-through of how George Street could be, and you've heard from Professor Newman on how he's given us details that Sydney faces if we get left behind in terms of transport. And Gail has presented to us both the Infrastructure New South Wales plan and Gladys Berejiklian's Transport New South Wales proposal. And I think we all know, and I do again thank you for coming out tonight. And I hope this is the last time we need to talk about what we need, and that next time we get together we're talking about what we think of the plan that's being presented to us. We are at a crucial moment for Sydney, and the choices made this year will affect the life and the economy of our city for generations to come. Just as the decisions for the Harbour Bridge, just as the decisions to pull out the trams for Sydney, and the impact those two decisions had on our city. So we have an historic chance to learn from past mistakes and the past inaction of recent decades. And we can learn from the research, both here and from overseas, and we can really call upon our government to get the transport system right. I think tonight's discussion has shown us a way forward. I think we'd all agree that we need courageous and determined political leadership that responds to the needs of our cities, both in the future. We don't need separate state bureaucracies competing for dominance. Indeed, the state government has merged numerous agencies into Transport for New South Wales to overcome just that chaotic situation that existed in the past. Yet we have Infrastructure New South Wales, as I think Tim Williams pointed out. They're asked to make recommendations about priorities, and they've created their own transport scheme based on motorways and at best incremental improvements to public transport, and have pushed key projects that we need now, the ones we've discussed tonight, and they've pushed them into the future because of the financial imperatives. So I think the evidence across the globe is that we cannot build our way out of congestion with more motorways, and that our future is grim if the priorities of Infrastructure New South Wales are implemented in our city. I think, as Peter showed us, increasingly people are voting with their feet. They are walking, they are cycling, they are using public transport, and they use it if it's there. Transport for New South Wales Master Plan does provide an alternative for the growing congestion, and it is more in keeping with global trends that are calling for public transport, as we saw even in the United States. So Peter Newman has pointed out that since the turn of the century, public transport patronage in Australian cities has grown faster than car usage. That does reflect US trends, and of course the pattern is repeated in other developed countries. He's also noted another sign of changing transport habits, and the fact we know that the financial failure of the recent toll roads, whether it be the Cross City Tunnel, the Lane Cove Tunnel, or the Clem Jones Tunnel in Brisbane. Indeed, transport is all about connection, and the fact is, for coming generations, mobile phones and tablets are far more important than a car. This was said to us at a city talk earlier this year or last year, I can't remember the exact time, and it was really quite a compelling suggestion. And in fact, our own planning director, Graham Yarn, said that again in the recent Sydney Morning Herald, and I quote from what he said: "The car was seen as a vehicle of freedom in the past, and now for our young generation, the growing generation, the generation whose future we're creating, the smartphone is seen as the vehicle of freedom." At the City, we believe that there is a need to radically rethink the planning of our city around people. It's not about one-dimensional proposals that get people from A to B, but it's about multifaceted solutions that bring communities together, that connect people, that create a livable environment, and that boost our prosperity. We do have an extraordinary opportunity to ease congestion, to improve the quality of the air, to reduce our greenhouse emissions, to beautify our streets and laneways, and give Sydney that great connecting spine that it needs, all the way from Circular Quay to Central Railway. And yes, we do need to get rid of the buses right in the heart of the city. There are about 360 in George Street each day. Burying the buses, though, is at least twice as expensive as light rail, and I think that's an interesting thing that we should dwell on. It won't actually reduce the numbers coming into the city, and it will require ugly stacks to vent pollution from the tunnel. We don't believe at the city that the CBD can cope with more buses, either in the city centre or on its approaches. And growing demand says we need to move to the next level of mass transit, and that, of course, is light rail. A line from Randwick will remove buses from the east, allowing through routing of buses from east to west, and allow more buses to terminate at the city edges. And a line to Green Square, which is an important area, it's as New South Wales and perhaps Australia's largest urban renewal area, that would provide a viable transport option for this area, which will provide another 22,000 jobs and 20,000 new homes for 40,000 residents in the next coming decades. But the first stage of the network has to be the city spine, as we've discussed tonight. The state's own transport master plan sees the advantage of this. There have been over 50 studies about the benefits of light rail, so they've been conducted for council, they've been conducted for government. And in fact, we do broadly support the government's plan, which is consistent with our Connecting Our City Transport strategy, which has just been on public exhibition. Unlike the proposed underground busway, light rail will bring life and vitality to our city streets, as particularly Margie and Justin have talked about tonight. Connect our tourist attractions, link our hotels and businesses to key destinations. And I think, as Margie said, give Sydney back to Sydney-siders, where it is so unpleasant to walk down Oxford Street now. Try it at lunchtime. There are 600,000 people on our footpaths at lunch hour, and it's really unpleasant. Imagine what it could be like. So our immediate focus for the city has been to protect George Street, to protect the millions of dollars invested in businesses that are seeing its possibilities. We want to ensure that this great opportunity for clean, efficient, sustainable transport isn't lost, and that we get the great public thoroughfare that all great cities deserve. I have written to the Premier to express the support of the City Council for the government's own master plan and our concerns about the Infrastructure New South Wales proposal. And tonight we are saying to you, we need your support to tell the government what your view is. So thank you, everyone.